You're listening to What's Up Digital Lending, the podcast that explores the exciting world of digital lending. We make a deep dive into the most important issues and talk to the leading minds of the ecosystem.
Hi everybody, welcome to episode number 13. My guests today are Nicole Czollek, Director at Business Service Solution, Alexander Maier, Vice President at IDnow, Damien Guermonprez, Co-founder and CEO at Lemonway, and Till Otto, Senior Associate at Annerton. They're going to introduce themselves and their company in more detail in a moment. My name is Constantin Fabricius and I'm the host of this podcast. What's up with digital lending in this episode? For the first time ever, it's about the beginning of the value chain and probably about one of the most important parts, onboarding. I will take a deep dive with 4 extraordinary experts from France and Germany and discuss the current state of play when it comes to a good customer experience, costs, efficiency, regulatory compliance, and so much more. But we will also discuss the technological approaches and the likely influence of open finance and AI on tomorrow's onboarding. But before we start, listen carefully to the following. The content of this podcast is expressly not to be considered investment advice, but is intended solely for your information. We do not assume any liability and will not share any profits. Okay, let's start talking now. Welcome, guys. Great to have you in the show.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, let's start with a short round of introductions. Who are you and who are you speaking for today? It's just that our listeners are able to identify the voices. Nicole, please, let's start with you.
Yes, sure. So, hi, everyone. And maybe first things first, thank you so much for the invitation for today's podcast. I'm Nicole Czollek and I'm working as Director Partner Sales at BSS or Business Service Solution in Fürth. BSS is the leading solution provider in the payment and banking sector and is also licensed by BaFin as an account information service provider. And in my role, I'm responsible for sales and the framework about technology surrounding regulatory requirements, as well as all topics related to AML and KYC.
Great, thank you. The next one, Keith.
My name is Alexander Maier, and thanks for having me. At IDnow, I'm responsible for our sales activities in the DACH region, mainly focusing on financial services. And IDnow itself is a European leading identity service provider headquartered in Munich, offering fully automated, semi-automated, and human-assisted identity solutions. And our customers consist of over 900 institutional customers across a wide range of industries.
Perfect. Welcome. Yes.
So I'm Damien Guermonprez. I am the executive chairman of a pan-European payment institution called Lemonway, and we are servicing marketplaces, all kinds of marketplaces, B2C, B2B, C2C, and alternative finance platforms. So we are onboarding many platforms, and that's the topic of the day. We are based in Paris. We have people in Hamburg, Germany. We are 150 people, and we achieved a break-even last year.
Okay, thank you very much, Damien. Great to have you in the show. Till.
Till Otto. I'm a lawyer at Annerton, a boutique law firm, so to say, founded in 2020 with a focus on regulatory law and all kinds of the regulatory law, and also with a particular emphasis on AML and KYC laws in particular. And thank you very much for having me.
So great. Let's quickly jump into our discussion. And I would like to start with a very simple warm-up question for everybody. Does today's way of onboarding fully meet the demand for simple, intuitive, aesthetically pleasing, convenient, and speedy processes? What's your take, guys?
It depends who you are. Meaning, it depends if you're just a user. In that case, it's very easy. If you are more than a user, that is a client or a platform itself. In our case, for example, I like to take the example of wedding list. You have a platform with couples getting married, for which we open a payment account. So we need to do the KYC. And then they will invite friends and family to contribute to their gifts. In that case, they are users, and you don't need any KYC for that. They are just users. And we will onboard this platform, and we will onboard the couples getting married. Sometimes they don't know us, so that's an issue. So in general, I would say that it may take some time for the platform itself to onboard. For the couple, it's very quick, and for the users, it's instant.
In addition to that, maybe we should also make a difference between the B2C, so the users, as you were talking about, Damien, and also the B2B customers. So I think or in my opinion, it's much easier to have an onboarding process just for individuals. Like on one hand, you just need to perform as a user the identification process, maybe some account information about yourself. But on the other hand, what is about the B2B markets? You need a lot of more information from the companies, for example, like you have the typical German GmbH. You need the commercial register extract, transparency register. Who is the UBO? Who is the signatory? And this makes the processes more complicated. And if the end user or the customer is like an SME, so a small company, it is also very difficult for him or for her because they don't have that knowledge about the structures needed for onboarding.
I can definitely relate to what Nicole and Damien said. I think it depends highly who you are and then also where are you located. So if we look at Germany, for example, there are different solutions at the market. And then maybe to add, it really depends how are those solutions integrated. So if you are an end user, so a private customer, and you get the chance to do your onboarding via a native app, so you don't have to use your laptop and so on, it can be really convenient and fast and speedy. If you don't have these capabilities of using an app, for example, it might be also more tricky.
Yeah, and just to add or to complete the picture, I think it really also strongly depends where you are situated and whether you do cross-border business and so on. So for the time being, this is kind of a struggle for most entities I'm dealing with.
Since you are the lawyer here today, Till, we should take advantage of it. And what does onboarding actually involve nowadays in Europe from a legal perspective? Please bring us up to speed on this.
So yeah, for the time being, we are kind of in a hybrid phase where there's new law on the horizon with the AML regulation. Until that, it's tricky and can be tricky. For the time being, when we talk about KYC and customer onboarding, we mostly talking about the AML directive. Currently enforced the applicable the fifth AML directive, and that has been transposed in the laws by all member states. But how they did it, this kind of differs up to now. Even if the directive had the picture or the goal of most of setting minimum standards and have a level playing field in Europe, but that is not the case. So as a finance institution which is active or doing business in Europe for the time being, you must assess in each of the 27 member states how they transpose the laws or the stipulations or provisions from the AML directives in their local AML law. Germany, for example, has a pretty unique approach, particularly when it comes to verification of identification data. This is an issue for most financial institutions which do inbound business in Germany, as an example. This should change in 2027 when the AML regulation will apply, because it's a regulation, and this means the regulation applies directly in each of the member states and also of the European Economic Area, so I think a bit of a wider approach. And this is very much welcomed from most of the financial institutions which are doing cross-border business or have physical presences of most of the European member states, because they think it will make life a lot easier for them in the future. I
agree. I just saw the chairman of the EBA this morning trying to convince them to push local regulators to work together, because frankly, today, I said we were a pan-European payment institution, but in fact, yes, we passported our license in all countries, but we continue to speak to local regulators in 28 countries. And we continue, because AML is local, to report locally all kinds of statistics. That's not normal. We were supposed to exist to work on a pan-European level to make things easier. So if we come back to square one, that's not good. That's what is happening today.
Okay. Thank you very much for this first round of answers. Let's drill perhaps a little bit deeper against this backdrop and look into the details. How do fintech lenders optimize their onboarding processes to the benefit of the customer, which is always one of the key points on the value chain? And at the same time, without sacrificing both KYC, AML regulatory compliance, speed, and efficiency in data capturing, as well as risking high break-off rates.
From our perspective, and if I look at our customer landscape, which consists of traditional banks, fintechs, and many more, also lending platforms, there's not one solution, but from an end customer perspective, it's always a huge benefit if you can offer a variety of different solutions. So in Germany, we have, if you look at AML compliance solutions for identifications and onboardings, there in the end you have 3 to 4 options, digital solutions from the so-called video ident, EID, so the functionality of the German ID card, and then also a combination of an automated flow combined with a penny transfer and a signature, a qualified electronic signature. And if you are offering this variety to an end customer, the customer at least can choose, depending on their preparations, also depending on their experience. And the good thing is that all 3 solutions from a data perspective, they capture all the necessary data which is needed to fulfill the local requirements in Germany. And there are deviations if it comes to fraud attacks, but at least from a regulatory and from a data perspective, all the 3 solutions are fulfilling what is needed in the end.
Okay, to get a little bit closer to this, a couple of days ago, one of our executive board members had to go through the KYC AML process, and because he was newly elected to the executive board, and later on we talked about it, and it's always the same thing, yet seems to be not really as comfortable as it could be. And the key point here about this is when it comes to customer experience on the one side and the obligation to the identification in view of customer experience, could these 2 things be brilliantly married somehow? Or are these 2 topics perhaps not at all opposed to each other as I am presenting them here?
No. I mean, in my opinion, there's definitely room to improve. If you look, for example, at the EID, this is in the end a brilliant product from a customer experience perspective, because what you need is your device, your mobile phone, your ID card, and your PIN, and that's it. There's no one you have to talk to. There are no waiting queues and so on. The only issue is that if we look at Germany, we don't have the traction yet because of the missing use cases. So what we see is around last data from April 2024 is 1.5 million of monthly EID usages, 1.5 million. If you compare this to Scandinavian countries, smaller countries, numbers are much higher. So we speak about 600 million in Sweden, for example. And this is, I think, leading to the fact that you have a compliant product, but in the end, not the capability for the majority, and because of the missing use cases to use it in the end.
Can you say anything about break-off rates? I know a good break-off rate is 0, of course. But up to what level are we still green in this area?
Yeah. Also here, I mean, as I mentioned before, it highly depends how you integrate those solutions. If it's frictionless, so if you have an own app, if you're integrating the solutions into your own app and there's no media breach, for example, so end customers, private users, they don't have to jump from one device to the other device and from one screen to the other screen. And then if you combine this with offering a variety of those mentioned solutions, then you can use or you can achieve conversion rates up to 90%, which is really good. And this is definitely, especially in the lending business, something we see. So as said, depends on the kind of integrations and the products you're offering.
Yeah, and maybe to add, besides of the integration, what is also a very, very important part of the customer experience, but on the other hand, is also important the communication to the end customer. So maybe also to explain what do they need to have a successful ID process, despite of EID, video identification, selfie-ID, whatever they need. For example, maybe I can just show my experience with you. I tried that last year for the first time, and I need 10 times to perform the EID process. And I would say I have some experience with identification processes on my side. But it was just about the mobile data. So if I had my Wi-Fi on, it would be much easier. Or if I had my mobile data, and I didn't know about that because there's no information. And Alex, I totally agree with you. So if you have a lot of possibilities how to verify your identity, it is also easier for the end user. But in my opinion, it's also important to explain how to do that, or to give any more possibilities to perform that. For example, the identification process was successful now because of internet, light. I mean, you perform also video identifications. But what about appointments? Just prepare the end user. What do they need? I need my passport and Aufenthaltstitel, for example, in Germany, if you are not an EU citizen. A lot of people don't know that, to be honest. And if we could prepare them for an appointment, for example, the drop rates would be, or the conversion rates, maybe on that side would be much higher.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And preparation or preparing the customers is really key. That's something we are doing together with our customers, because in the end, they are owning the front end, and they are also owning the whole customer onboarding flow. And what we are always doing is we are sharing the best practices, what is actually needed to give your customer at hand, well, where should they be, in which kind of location, what kind of documents can be used depending on the solution. And as you said, having also a fallback is super important, because it might be that your mobile data is not fast enough, or your Wi-Fi, or whatever, and then having at least the option as a fallback using another solution is super important. Yeah.
I wanted to speak about cost because I don't know if Alexander is prepared, but I would like to tell him that what we've experienced in the past, the costs have been increased by 10 in the last 10 years. To be frank, we did it ourselves at the beginning. And of course, there was no face recognition tools, and we used our own database, etc. And then we moved to Onfido, CompAdvantage, iSoft. And we have a complete suite of software solutions to help us to do this. But the prices went from 57 cents per KYC to €5. And of course, the end user at the end is paying for that. So maybe, Alexander, you have an idea. What do you do for that?
I mean, it also here, and not talking about the competition now, it really depends on if you have someone, or if you have human-assisted products, you have obviously always labor costs you need to calculate in. If you look at fully automated solutions, like the EID, for example, and EIDs, it's not a product which is only available in Germany. I mean, that's also for you guys super important. This is something, you have EID schemes all over Europe. And also automated solutions, I think we are just at the beginning that from a cost perspective, there will be efficiency factors which will kick in the next years. I mean, looking how can you actually use AI, for example, going forward in order to onboard customers. I mean, it's a really sensitive topic, and because from a fraud perspective, AI is also used. That comes on top, and sometimes we see this also that even with automated products, it might make sense that in the review, a real person looks at that case to make sure is this, for example, a social engineering case, which is hard to detect by software solutions, for example, nowadays. So, yeah, I mean, from a cost perspective, as everything has increased in the last year, as said, I think the improvements on technology sides we see should also then help to on the customer side to improve things. You're now on mute, Damien.
The good news I was saying is that platforms are ready to pay, which was not the case 10 years ago. They thought that we were just payment institution, not in charge of KYC. So now they understood that we are in charge of compliance, make sure they become compliant.
And maybe one last comment on the costs. What is also quite important is that we not only have AMLD6 kicking in the next month and next year. We have also the eIDAS 2.0, which will offer the reuse of identities, so wallets, all over Europe. And if you think about reusing an already AML compliant identification, costs will of course be lower than the initial identification you would need.
And this part is also very important if we separate the new customers and also the current customers. I mean, if you have the new customers, maybe you have a larger CPO on that type of customer, but you also need to re-identify him or her. So after like 1 year, 2 years, it depends on their risk level, but you also need to make a re-identification process. And if you have the possibility to make reusable, so let's go one step further to make it reusable, and maybe to share also the identities, you have also the possibility to have an ongoing due diligence, like to have sure Alexander Maier, it's the person or it's still the person, and maybe he's still the signatory of any kind of company. But right now, the main focus is, as I said at the beginning, like on private or individual customers. But what is about the B2B? So it should also be possible to have like a reusable identity of companies. And it just doesn't matter if it's small or big. It is also important to identify them and to have it up to date or over the next years. I mean, in my opinion, you should have, if you start any kind of working with a customer, you want to have it still in the next years, but you have the compliance challenges and we need to make it reusable in the B2B market, what we are focusing on, for example.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, in the B2B business, I think the biggest challenge of for the finance institution, because the effort in particular when you have international customers for doing your KYC business is a huge effort. And this becomes even more crucial because the update cycle will increase significantly under the AML regulation. So currently we're talking about update periods of 2 years for high-risk customers in Germany, 10 years for regular KYC obligations, and up to 15 years for simplified due diligence. This will increase to 1 year for high risk, 2 years for regular risk, and 4 years for simplified due diligence measures under the AML regulation. I mean, you can do the numbers. Everybody's aware that this will mean a huge challenge for finance institutions, particularly from a cost basis. So everything what will reduce the cost for the financial institutions is, I guess, much welcomed.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Very important thoughts regarding costs and customer experience. We will getting back to this later on. But let's now switch onto the other side. I mean the fintech lenders, and let's talk about technology and your technological approach. What are the methods and best practices when it comes to the implementation of onboarding technology with digital lenders? What can you tell the audience about it when it comes to your services? What is your experience?
I can start maybe from our perspective. So our main focus is on the B2B market. So maybe also as a background for BSS. So our main focus is the B2B onboarding and digitizing identity management, and also to make KYC or KYB process reusable. And our main focus is to make the onboarding process as easy as possible for the end user. Because if any kind of customer starts a process, it is a high risk of drop rates if they won't understand what to do. So at one hand, if you have the perspective on companies, what are the documents you need for your onboarding? Like it's a transparency register, or is it maybe a civil law partnership where you need the contract of both traders, for example. And one type of that, you can do it completely automatical, like with APIs to the transparency register or to the all other documents. but what about the other topics? And you need to help them how to understand it with, for example, with AIs, for example, with OCR, to find the keys and also the information you need for your onboarding process. So maybe from my perspective, what is the biggest mistake an SME does? They cannot separate like the store name or the company name. Like my company could be Nicole GmbH, but my store name is Nicole Session. But they think it's the same, but from the compliance perspective, it's not right. And then you have a lot of, in the worst case, manual working afterwards. So it should be as easy as possible, as understandable as possible. And also, in addition to that, AI techniques to detect all information to support the customer. So beside of self-onboarding to support onboarding.
And maybe to add to that, IDnow, we are following a platform approach. So our goal is to offer the majority of the products via one single integration to make it as easy and as flexible for our customers to, in the end, offer then our solutions to their end customers. So you also work with APIs. And then if it comes to the identification flows, there are different options. You can use SDKs, which you can integrate into your native app. We have also mobile web SDKs. Our products are also available via laptop, via tablets, and so on. So you always take into account all the devices available at the market in the end. And if it comes then to data files and so on, we can take over archiving, for example, a super important topic. Also, if it comes to signatures, for example, going forward in the future. And that's how our technical approach works.
Yeah, this is a very important point. So we should focus also on the end-to-end processes. So you have like the information about the person or the company, and then the identification part and the eSign part. So this is a full onboarding process which needs to be without any media break. And this is very important because if you have the first media break, for example, the integration wasn't working, any bug is there, or the end user didn't know right now the identification process is starting, or he's in the waiting room and is still waiting, and he was maybe won't have time to deal with that. And the focus should be also on to increase the media breaks.
Yeah, definitely. So you should always have the option, that's how we do it, to combine your identification with a QoS, so the most high level of a signature without getting into a new process or something else. Yeah,
absolutely.
Can I add something? Usually, the platforms we are onboarding are already a portfolio of clients. So it's important to get the clients before the switch so that we can open as many payment accounts as they have clients. And then on the day, then they send a wire transfer and we split the amount to all the different payment accounts, and we start working with the new platform. We have a team of to implement this onboarding, dedicated to onboarding only. And that's the best way to do it, I think, to educate the people how to use the API and how to be prepared to the switch.
And regarding your respective approaches, your technical approaches, how easy is it to implement it, and what are the typical obstacles? I think it's very important to elaborate a little bit further on this. So if there is a new player around the block, so what should this player take into account when it comes to the implementation from a pure technical point of view?
Mm. I think to start with this, there are two main factors. One of them is documentation is key. So you need to have a proper API documentation with the quality of, on the other hand, having engineers and product people for example, at the fintech lending platform to be capable to deal with this. And then you need a dedicated onboarding team. So you need the paperwork and you need the human support to be capable to offer a fast and efficient onboarding. And we have seen customers going live within 2 weeks. So out of experience, really, really fast from first day of having a look at the documentations, testing, and so on, and then really going live. And then it depends also on your your IT landscape. I mean, the bigger the company and the more legacy frameworks you might have, the more complex it can get. So it depends a bit also on your
also
own.
Regulatory issues are important.
Of course, yeah.
We make our platforms becoming a payment agent of Lemonway. So they need to start a process with the regulator. It takes 2 months. So it's we need to make sure we start as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, aside of the technical integration, you have obviously always a due diligence you need to go through. Normally, as an identity provider, I mean, you need to go through all the checks of a bank, for example, or a fintech. They need to comply if they are outsourcing their services, and this can take time. Yeah, I agree.
Till, from the legal perspective, what could you contribute to the discussion here at this point? What are the typical obstacles companies face when it comes to the implementation of this kind of technology to tackle the onboarding challenges?
Yeah, it's difficult to give one single answer to that. I think it's there's plenty of obstacles such companies are facing. I mean, when it comes, maybe it starts with the onboarding of the service provider itself. What Alexander just addressed, and also Damien just shortly, that is you have the due diligence phase from the financial institutions using an external provider. This is sometimes kind of a challenge, and depending on the services that the outsourcing service provider is providing, it has become a little bit more complicated due to DORA, which will apply in January. And so currently onboarding of a new external service provider for financial institutions is sometimes a bit tricky. That's maybe the starting point. And then it's, I think it is all about having a sweet spot between being compliant and finding the most suitable or have the best way of dealing with your compliance obligations. So how do you collect the data? How can you reuse your data without the need to have the burden on the customer to provide double inputs and 3 times inputs? Do you have any existing sources of data which you reuse in the onboarding of the customer? So, for example, putting in your address 3 times in the onboarding is not necessary from a compliance perspective, but still often the case. And to identify your process, your onboarding process, with support of your external provider, which is the expert in compliance, I think this is the way to go.
There's an obstacle we did not speak about is the need to cover many countries. And frankly, that's the reason why KYC providers are now global companies. We used to do that ourselves, but then they need to be global. Otherwise, you cannot open an account for a person in South Korea or China or elsewhere.
Yeah, I strongly agree. This is a challenge for US financial institutions who does cross-border business because you have to examine which AML laws now apply and which are the particularities. This is particularly also a burden if you are in financial institution and you deal with foreigners or persons situated in third countries. This is often the case, or complicated when you have huge companies as customers with persons to be identified in, for example, China or in Asia or the United States. This is really tricky.
US persons, they are a nightmare. And not from from a legal point.
Not only from the AML perspective. I can.
Maybe to add to that, I mean, and I agree with Till. For us, for example, it's easy to identify an end user, and we can independently where they're coming from. So we can cover the majority of documents which are available globally. But there's not one single provider, for example, who can fulfill all the local regulations globally, and that's where it gets tricky. As you said in the beginning, even in Europe, we don't have the harmonization we need yet. We will have it, but if you have then a customer, financial institution who wants to operate in the US, in Asian countries, and so on, and it goes even more complex. That this is currently really, really difficult.
In KYC, the winner takes all. Seems. Bigger you are, better you are.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, Europe is so far big enough for us, and then let's speak again in 5-10 years.
Another item that I have on my list of questions regards the accessibility directive. I know, Nicole, you and BSS, you are out because this is B2C, but you are welcome to contribute to the following discussion.
Well, we are doing also KYC processes.
So, I was going to say, I think it's still affecting you if you need to identify the legal representative, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So all topic about video identification KYC processes, it is also in our scope.
Perfect. So, but what about the accessibility directive? And how much does it already play a role in this context? And perhaps first of all, because I don't know if really everybody in Europe already know what the accessibility directive is. So as we have today this legal expert Till with us, may I ask you to shed some light on this, what it is, and afterwards I would be more than happy to discuss the accessibility directive, especially in view of customer experience. Till.
You nearly got me on the wrong foot, but fortunately I have it open on my screen because I think maybe to get directly to that is that I think it has too little attention currently in the market for the impact it might have on the institutions. So accessibility directive, the name can be a bit misleading. So we're advising one financial institutions, and they say, okay, it has something to do with construction. And said, okay, it's not relevant for us. And then we had to say, no, this is exactly wrong. So what the accessibility directive covers, and it is a pretty old directive. It was published in 2019 in the official journey, but it will have the biggest impact in 2025 or mid of 2025, which was not that far away anymore. And what does it regulate? It regulates for a lot of different products. On one hand, traditional analog products, I would say, and on the other hand, digital products and particular banking products. Certain provisions on accessibility, which means on one hand, it has to be inaccessible for persons that have some kind of handicap. On the other hand, it has to be easily accessible for a broad range of customers and particularly consumers. And this is something which you really would need to assess your current products, your current onboarding, your website, all your information you are giving to the customer and to the consumer, if it complies with the stipulations in these accessibility directive. It has been transposed already in 2021 in Germany with the so-called Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz. It has a regulation beside that is accompanying this law, and it has a very strict and very detailed regulation on how you should design your information to the consumer and how you have to do it. One example, you have to make sure that it's easily understandable from the consumer, and this means it shouldn't be more complicated phrase than on a European language level from B2, as it is defined in the harmonized standard set in Europe. I did, for example, the terms and conditions, one of major financial institutions who does a lot of, or nearly solely B2C business, and this was very far away of the standard. So this means you must rephrase your complete terms, you must rephrase your instructions to the consumer, and so on and so on. And depending on your product approach, I mean, this can be quite an effort.
This will be challenging for Web3 players.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
So you have to step away from the official authority languages.
Yes.
Who's actually giving this?
This can be quite challenging for us lawyers, exactly, in particular too, because we tend to be a little more complicated than it's needed. But yeah, it has to be on one side legally valid and compliant, and on the other hand, it has to be easily understandable. This is kind of a huge effort.
Okay, so in a nutshell, because not everybody has contributed to it, so do you see a an opportunity rather than a risk in the accessibility directive?
Yeah, I mean, it can have a good impact on the market and particularly on the understandability on how terms and conditions and how in general information to consumers are to be presented. This can be an advantage for the consumers, definitely.
I think from our side, so we have always tried to make our solutions products accessible for everyone in the end, because I mean, as a private customer, you should be capable to use every digital solution which is available in the market. It was always the game and the goal. They're obviously always taking into account you have to fulfill and comply also with local regulations. If you look at video ident, there are certain restrictions from BaFin, from the German regulator, that you need to be aware of. And besides that, so we are on our side, we are also currently looking into if we can even make it more easy and even more accessible for disabled people. And I think from a bank perspective, it's important that you have at least a fallback or a solution at hand, which you can offer to, in the end, to everyone who would fall into that kind of group who needs help. So if you think about someone who is just not capable to use a digital solution, then you would need in-person identification, just to keep it really simple.
Yeah, and this will be a very challenging part of digital onboarding. I mean, the biggest sector is focusing on the digital onboarding processes. And if we look at people which only has a sign language, for example, and you will have the possibility to perform a video identification process, this is the first challenge, because you need to be able to say anything, to hear. And this is, in my opinion, very challenging maybe for a lot of or some companies, how to proceed with that. But this is what you mentioned, Alex, very important, the variety of the possibilities. For example, EID. So everyone will be able to use, if you have the technical knowledge, of course, but to use that, and you don't need to have like the personal touch with anyone. Or if you have more automated identification, like the auto identification or self-identification, maybe not an AML regulated sector, but this should be the focus on the accessibility. And this is very important, because it's if you don't have a post near you, or if you look at the German market, like the BaFin say, you need to make it in person or video or whatever. In Austria, for example, or Switzerland, you don't have the post. What do you want to do with your other customers in the DACH region? And this is important. So it's very important to have a focus on the variety and accessibility.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's also the reason why it's an opportunity, because, I mean, banks, fintechs, and so on, they will be also to a certain extent be forced to look in more detail into a broader variety of offerings to fulfill those accessibility requirements.
Yeah. And if you are a digital bank, so without personal contact, this would be challenging if they won't focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because you just mentioned Deutsche Post, and that's not the one solution, because even in Munich here, if I don't know where the next post office would be, to be honest. We are also looking into that, into offering kind of solutions with more stations or more shops. But yeah, in the end, you need to make the digital products also accessible. Yeah.
Damien, you wanted to say something on this?
Make things simpler is always good. I'm coming from the consumer credit sector, where we used to have small characters. And I was CEO of a bank covering 15 countries, and there were 2 countries where we had shares when people were opening credit cards, because they wanted to read the contracts. And it was China and Poland. And otherwise, people were signing. I think it's good till that people now may have access to simpler contracts, and they understand what they sign. At the same time, we need to make sure we are not preventing innovation. So in case it becomes complex, we need to tell the people these products are available for professionals. The same way professional investors do exist, and they have access to other kind of products than others. So Yes, it's good, but it's also a new, I understood, new law, rules or directive coming, and they are enough. We spend our time adapting ourselves to new directives and European rules. Don't you think?
That enough is enough, Damien. You will remember till as well. This is what we tried to highlight in Brussels on our conference when we had the European Commission and other national and international stakeholders sitting there around, and that it's as regards regulation enough. And it would be it would be better to perhaps overhaul the current state of play, but not invent new directions. And that's a game, I think. I think it was you, Alexander, at the very beginning. You mentioned onboarding together with AI and open finance, and this is what I would like to get back to at the end now of our podcast again. And I would like to look with you into the crystal ball and ask you about the future of onboarding service providers in the unbundled and open landscape of open finance and AI. Is your expectation. And this especially would be great to hear, to have your view till from a legal perspective later on. So, please.
Well, good question. I mean, if we look into the future, and we have already, as mentioned, the eIDAS 2.0 and AMLD 6 kicking in, and also then with that new products coming to the market, like a wallet solution, so the reusable option of identifications, things are changing. In my opinion, there won't be, also in the future, there won't be that one single solution everybody will use. That won't be the case. I think we will definitely still follow this platform approach, that you, depending on your use case, depending on your target group and your technical capabilities, you as a bank, as a fintech and so on, you will offer, and also depending on, are you only operating in one market or several countries, you will offer different kind of solutions, more and more supported also by AI. Yeah, that's definitely the case, because what we often obviously also following are fraud trends. So what do we see? We see deep fakes, we see social engineering, and then it's also the question, how can AI actually help to prevent and to stop those fraudsters? So those are the trends, and also the future we are seeing upcoming, and hopefully as more harmonization in Europe, definitely. Yeah, because that makes it easier. I mean, it makes it easier to expand to other countries for a bank, independently of if you're passporting or branching. There shouldn't be a competitive disadvantage depending where you're coming from.
And not only the topic about expanding, for example, so we have the possibility to enrich data also with the open finance, because in our side is as an account information service provider, we have also possibility to enrich the data with rating, with the liquidity checks, for example. Does the end user have any kind of chargebacks, so that the rating scale is maybe decreasing or something, or does the customer has any kind of specific insurance? So also upselling possibilities and making the customer journey easier, because you have the data, you can work with data. Of course, the topic fraud is very, very important on that case. But if we have the data, also the end user allows to work with the data, it will be much easier to have like upselling possibilities, or the reusability of the ID checks, because we are working with that. Or PSD3, for example, you need to have the same name of the bank account with the end user, which is working on any kind of onboarding. In the future, this will be very important.
Definitely. This is actually something I missed. So something we are also looking into is how can we actually enrich the identification part. So this means identification providers will not only be focusing on just providing the picture of an ID document and making sure it's the same person and so on, and that's it. In the future, we are currently, for example, adding different services, as Nicole mentioned, and this can come from open finance. So Also providing a account snapshot if it comes to, especially in lending, super important, and PEP and sanction list checks and so on. So there's actually no end, because if you look at the term KYC, this doesn't start and doesn't end with the ID document and the person. There's much more around it, and I think this will come more and more from those providers, because the more you can offer, the less is the amount of providers a bank needs to work with in the end.
I just wanted to add, so of course, if I know you, for example, Alex, I have your ID card, I have your identification process, check. But what is about your creditworthiness if you're looking on the bank side? So if you want to have any kind of credit, lending or banking, whatever, what is about your creditworthiness? What is about your rating scale? And this is and those are important information to have the decision. Yes, it could be our customer, or no, it's high risk. I won't take this customer to our company, for example. This is also possible because of the open finance, to make it more automatically. So working with AIs, have it in real time. With our solution, you can have it in real time if you're onboarding. And maybe you can have your decision before you will have the onboarding and the CPO costs will increase. How can I decide, no, I won't work, for example, with you, Damien, because of X. Yes, but you will have the information you can work with.
Nicole, it's exactly what I wanted to say. With open finance, open banking, we are dealing not only with, we are improving different identification, but also we improve score systems and therefore credit scores. And we provide better decisions. And therefore, I mean, it is a very good thing for all those providing credits. Especially consumer credit. Unfortunately, in France, banks are still reluctant to share everything. I mean, not all banks, but some. And the last months, for example, 4 of our biggest open banking players have changed of CEOs. They changed their CEOs because they are struggling. And they're struggling because, in fact, payments on open banking are working only at 47% today. So half the payments are not done. Or worse, the payments are lost. Not lost, but we don't know exactly where is the payment. So it's a real issue in France. We need to make sure that DSP3 is forcing all players to play the game. Okay? Otherwise, they'll disappear. Absolutely. They will simply disappear. I mean, the French players in open banking will disappear.
Absolutely.
They don't make money. They lose a lot.
Yeah, for startups and fintechs, I've also seen them in my previous roles at a bank, where you supported fintechs expanding into countries and then getting a customer base. And then if you get for example, as a self-employed person, you can't pay your bills because your payments are kicked back. Huge issue. I mean, it's not how it works.
Yeah, and as a bank, you will have the risk because you will give like any kind of credit. And without knowing about the creditworthiness or liquidity or rating or whatever, it will be a risk and you will have higher costs. And the main focus is to digitize and have lower costs.
True.
Till, what is your view from a legal perspective on open finance and AI? What's your take?
Yeah, I think there's very much in pipeline currently. So I just the day before yesterday, the European Council published their opinion on the negotiate position on the FIDA regulation, and this will address a huge portion of these issues we're currently discussing. And it seems that the European Council is also very much has a positive approach to the FIDA regulation by itself. So I think we are on a good way that this will become reality. In the near future, maybe at comparable time with the AML regulation, they updated, and then we have the transposition of the EU digital identity wallet. So there's very much in the pipeline. At the end, it will a little bit depend on what the regulator does with it, and on the other hand, on what's the market acceptance. So we were discussing about the German EID solution, which I think everybody in the field is agreeing that this is from a security and also from a security perspective a very good instrument. But on the other hand, it never gained market acceptance. So this will make the difference if we have one solution or several solutions which will gain track and will develop market acceptance in the whole European market. And then I think when we are talking about in 3 or 4 years, our discussion will be completely different.
Yeah, we will have another talk on this. That's for sure. And so thank you very much, guys. This has been really a wonderful and interesting hour talking with you about onboarding processes, technology, your view, and open finance and AI. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
It was great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you have also enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you subscribe to our podcast and follow us on LinkedIn so that you will never miss our podcast. The next episode will be on access to finance and what role specifically open finance and AI play in mitigating disparities. Enjoy the time before Christmas and see you soon.